those things to keep it at the forefront of our mind, because we also believe that African history, Africana studies, Black history is American history. We never want to lose sight of that. Brother Ricky.
All right, and I always say, Keith, slavery is not African history. Slavery is the interruption of African history that lasts fewer years than Mali, Songhai, and so forth. So I'm going to open up and I'm going to do it poetically. I only have just 5 questions, and this is not a conversation. What I really want to have is a dialogue. And the difference between a dialogue and a discussion is that in a discussion, we try to change views. In a dialogue, I'm going to listen to you and you're going to listen to me. Is that okay with y'all?
Yeah.
All right. And I had a PowerPoint presentation, but we'll show it on the next one. All right. But I want to open up poetically and give you a poem called Two Sets of Notes. And this will help us where we're going. It says, 2 sets of notes. You ready? This is a poem by M.K. Asante. He wrote this poem when he was getting in trouble in school. And they sent him to an alternative school and told him to write. So he wrote 2 sets of notes, and I quote. He says, sometimes I feel like I'm above the ground and the ceiling, in institutions that disengage in healing. Instead, open warp wound, trap me in a room, consumed with hypocrisy. But it occurs to me that Greek philosophers didn't author their own philosophy. Statues on campus be watching me. Washington, Jefferson, Williams clocking me to say, Negro, your time is up. But I don't run laps around tracks, I run laps around scholars of tomorrow, because new school of thought is merely our history borrowed. They'll label me militant, black national radical, trying to put my learning process on a sabbatical. But I don't apologize. Speak the truth to the whites of their eyes, infected by white lies. They even try to get me to see their point of view by a brother that looks like me. Their brother don't walk like me, talk like me, or act like me. He even turned his head and ran when I asked if he was black like me. Memorizing their thoughts and forgetting our own and wonder why we always feel alone. From the media to academia, hanging our brothers like coats. But in their schools, always take 2 sets of notes. 1 set to ace the test and 1 set to know the truth. And when I find the historical contradictions, I use the first set as proof. Proof that our youth minds are being polluted, convoluted, diluted, not culturally rooted in anything except Western massacre. Most of us are scared of Africa. We view our mother's land through the eyes of David Hare and Emmanuel Camden. Emmanuel can't tell me about a land he never seen. A land rich with history, beautiful kings and queens. But they'll have you to believe otherwise. The history is built off high-rise lies. The pyramids were complete before Rome or Greece were conceptualized. And then they'll claim that the Egyptian race is a mystery. You tell them to read Herodotus' book 2, it's their history. It can't get any clearer. Young people look in the mirror. We are the reflection of divinity. Don't be fooled by selective memory. Walk high and listen to the elders who spoke. Young people always take 2 sets of notes. And that's what I want to talk about today. Yeah, I want to learn a history, but also learn our history, right? And when you hear the word history, it sounds like his story. But my story sounds like mystery, right?
Yeah.
His is history, but mine is mystery. You think about that. But everybody learns history. You should always learn history. When you go into the doctor, the first thing they ask you is, what's your medical history? Right. When I went and got my teeth done, guess what they wanted to know? My dental history, right? Before you get married, you better know some history. So when we don't know our history, what do they do for us? So I have like a few questions. So I'm just going to ask the questions, and we'll just get into the dialogue. Is that cool? All right. So here's the first question. How does understanding African history contribute to a more comprehensive view of global history and culture? I'll read it again. How does understanding African history contribute to a more comprehensive view of global history and culture? Talk to me.
Know thy history, know thyself.
Know thy history, know thyself. Anybody else? How does it contribute? And is that important? Or do I need to read it another way? I'm going to read it one more time. How does understanding the African history contribute to a more comprehensive view of global history? And if y'all don't respond, I'm going to start calling people. So, talk to me. There you go.
When you, because of the fact that you got 2 different histories. Histories are always written by the victor. Okay. And so when you're reading in your history books, you're reading from the perspective of who won. Right. As opposed to what actually was. And so if you're looking at it from a vantage point of their history, then you're overlapping with African history, you get the full story. And I'm going to bet you get the full impact of our contributions to society.
Okay. Wow. I like that. And it's been said, if you don't know what was, you can't know what is. And if you don't know what is, you're ill prepared for that to come. So wise people study history, her story, my story, and the list goes on. Right? So because if I don't know what was, how am I know what is? So when I'm talking to my kids right now, we in school, they have no idea of slavery. So we in these schools now, they're taking these books out, right? But we don't even know what books they're taking out. So how do you know what you want to know and what you need to know? You have no clue. And if you go ask the schools, they don't know what books were taken out or which ones were taken in. Let me ask another one. Don't go nowhere. Here's the next one. In what ways can studying African history help us address contemporary issues such as social justice, identity, and cultural heritage? In what ways can studying African history help us address contemporary issues such as social justice, identity, and cultural heritage?
It just sums up our history. It lets us know that everything is coming full circle. It's like 1964 again. The advocacy, the activism, and everything that went on then is going on now. But if you know that, you know that that's not something that's new. We always have to speak truth to power, and let your voice be known.
You want to veggie back?
Yeah, let me add a little to
You got to
that,
get permission from him.
if I can.
There you go. You get
No
your permission.
buffet style.
Yes.
All right.
In addition to what Brother Vince said, a knowledge of history will also allow you to not be influenced by marketing and things that you may see that try to control or create a narrative of who you are or who your people are, if you know, in essence, where you come from.
Anybody else?
That's the SWAC definition.
Anybody else want to add to that?
Understand.
Why do you think learning your history is important? Not somebody else's history, your history.
My history.
That's right.
That's a really good question. Just because, based on my history, I was brought here as a young boy. So I'm originally from Mexico.
Okay.
So I feel like I am missing a lot of that history from me. So I can see why it is important for just anyone to know where they come from, who their people were, just to expand to just like knowing the music of knowing the history of music itself.
Yeah.
A lot of music, especially like in Latin America, comes from African descendants. You know, a lot of our music comes from there. So it's
A lot of musical
important.
instruments.
A lot of musical instruments. So it's very, very important to see why our music sounds like that nowadays, where it comes from.
So let me ask you a question. Why is it important to learn your history?
Well, I mean, it's important for me to learn my history. I feel like in America to see where the people that I come from have made massive atrocity, right? I mean, and for me to be able to, number one, make sure that I'm not repeating those things and that my children are not repeating those things, and the influence I have to their friends are not repeating those things. And frankly, a lot of the things within white culture that have been adopted and taken from other people's culture. So I think that that's important for people in the white community to learn and acknowledge.
Yeah, because if I can veg you back off what you're saying, white folks don't know the history and blacks don't know it either. So why do you think it's important that you know our history?
I think to add on to kind of what everybody was talking about, it's like if we don't understand the history, then it's bound to repeat itself. I think we see a clear example of it nowadays with all of the things that are being repealed, or like voting rights that are being taken away from us, like, and people don't understand like how that even came to be, who fought for that, who fought for you to have that. And we kind of like, because we don't understand that history, it's just taken for advantage, and then we don't even realize what we've lost until it's already gone. So
Thank you for sharing. Anybody want to add? Why do you think it's important?
I think it's important to know your history so you can be proud of yourself, proud of your people. Because before I met you, I thought that, for black people, slavery was the beginning for us. And so now, since I've been with you, I can, I would like to say I would know my history now. I know where we started from, the kings and queens, what we built throughout the world, how we inspired others, even whites, blacks, Hispanics, Asians. So we've inspired all these different types of people. And then I realized now that slavery, it just showed how strong the African American man and woman really was.
Wow.
Millions.
Really? Thank you. Young man, you the youngest one. I'm gonna come there too. And I know you're the youngest one, but I can pick on you because you're my nephew often. Why do you think the study of your history is important? Or do you think it's important at all? Did you hear? So there you go.
I think it's important so we can learn about where our culture originated from.
He said he thinks it's important so we can learn about where our culture originated from. You're right, Austin.
Good answer.
Come on.
Yeah, I think the reason why my history is so important
Okay.
because it sets up guardrails, if you will, between errors and truth.
Come on.
And that's it.
Okay. Sister, why do you think it's important?
I want to push back a little bit
Come on.
on, I feel like history doesn't repeat itself. Like people say history is a circle. I feel like history spirals.
Wow.
Right? And so a lot of the same things, themes, right, motifs pop up, but time keeps going forward, right? And so I feel like a lot of times, just like you mentioned, like it's important for white people to know white history, it's
Right.
important for black people to know black history. And the reason for that is a lot of people with privilege don't realize how much white supremacy hurts them too,
Whoa.
right? Because if we're really clear on what white supremacy is, it's not just white people are better than black people. It's like white, wealthy, cis men. Like it's a very set identity that's said to be better than everyone else. And as soon as you're not, someone without a disability, as soon as you're not a white person, as soon as you're not a man, as soon as you're not wealthy, like you're a little bit less than someone else. And so the poet Ariana Brown says, white supremacists don't know what it's like to touch the earth and not want to own it.
Wow.
Right? And I think that's really important just because, if you think about indigenous people across all races, right, whether they be white, whether they be Latino, whether they be, black, they all have that shared notion of respecting the earth, right? And respecting that one person cannot be better than another person. And so, if you really want to get at the root of history, right, it's getting to the point where white people were colonized out of Europe.
That's right.
White people colonized themselves.
That's correct.
Right? And that's like the root of white supremacy, is the belief that someone with money, the belief that someone of a different color, the belief of anyone can be better to someone else, and to say, I can own your labor, or I can own your worth, or I can own you.
Teach. Thank you for sharing. Bro, I'm asking the same question. Why do you think learning your history is important? I'll be coming to you too, sir.
It's important to understand yourself.
It's important. I want to know why it's important to you, not us. Why is it important to you?
Because I live my day to day for myself. If I live it for the people around me. But it's important to understand your history so that as many people have said already, that we don't repeat the same sins, the same atrocities that we committed in the past. I find it so hard to follow up.
I know. That's why I called you out. Yeah, it's hard to follow up. Bro, can I ask you a question? Beautiful. Let me ask you that question, brother. Why do you think it's important to learn our history? Or do you think it's important to learn our history? I see you too.
One of the things, it's exciting when people learn, when we learn our history. Why is it important? It's important. Let's go back to what you said, so we don't make the same mistakes that we made. There's a book called, I think it's Ta-Nehisi Coates. We had 8 years.
Okay.
Now you got to read the book because I want you to think about when I went to Washington D.C. and went to the Black Museum. We had the first 8 years after Reconstruction. Well, let me tell you what happened. That was one of the most powerful times in this country because you had poor whites, other folks who came together and they see that we didn't have to depend on the plantation master, but we could come together. We could grow crops. We could get together, and we could be a part of the government. Now, one of the things they don't tell you about, and I never knew this, Ricky, that was a man a slave out of North Carolina,
Enslaved,
ex-slave,
right?
where
Or enslaved. He wasn't
he
no
was
damn slave.
enslaved. But anyway, what happened was they had him on this ship, and he stole the ship.
Yeah.
He did. He stole, it was a southern.
Henry Small. I think that's his name.
Yeah. He stole the ship, and I never knew this.
Yeah.
He went up and down the South, put slaves on this southern battleship. Then he turned the ship over to the north,
Then he became
a battleship. Then he became a senator.
first son.
He was the first senator, I think, in North Carolina.
Yes, he is.
And he
But you didn't know that story.
But I didn't know that. I had to go learn that story, and that changed the way we thought. And I'll tell you another story that you'll never hear.
You ain't gonna tell all of them. Well, go ahead.
There's one story, you know, they called, and I grew up in Atlanta and never heard of this. It's called the Washerwomen of Atlanta. It was two black women who decided they weren't going to wash clothes for minimum wages anymore. They ended up, long story short, they started a movement that not only encompassed the black washerwomen, but also the white washerwomen, and shut Atlanta, Georgia down.
No, I didn't know that.
I never heard that story,
So,
but only by doing it. But that's why it's important, so our children can feel empowered. Because right now, you got, Rick and I come from 50 years of working on the streets.
yeah, we
You
had.
got young guys on the streets, they don't even know, and I was hurt when I heard somebody say, y'all ain't never done nothing over here on the south side,
Because they don't know.
and they don't know. South side,
Hold that thought.
over, if you go down Rosedale, I'm just gonna tell this, go down Rosedale and Evans, there are two piers there. Look at those piers, stop, look at those piers, and you will see one of them that talks about all the businesses that were once in that community.
Oh, I love it over there.
And I'm working, that's where I live and that's where I work.
And I love that library of it, but the only part I don't love about it is the people that's in the library don't know the symbol, don't know the Indinka symbol. That's not what we get. I can get you, and we're gonna get you out of here so you get your wife. These two, and we run out of here. Two questions, right? Give me, why do you think our community is important? And I want to ask you the same question, and we're gonna be moving. Why do you think it's important?
Well, very quickly, Ricky, thank you. I was rushing from another meeting trying to get over here.
Is that right?
Gerrymandering meeting, but it's important for me.
Come on, that's why I want
Number one, to know my genesis, my beginning, and not the narrative that have been told in schools, and to know my values, and to know my worth, and to know that innovators and creators of some of the great things in this nation come from our history, and things that other people have taken, and some people say taken credit for.
Yeah, they call it out.
And so it lets me know that we're able to even do greater things even today, when we know our value, our worth, and know where it all began, not just in slavery, but far back then. So it's important to me as an individual to know this, and that's why we have the schools and things.
So I was about to say, let me say it.
Yeah, I have schools
That's why
and
in the
14
summertime,
14 years of school.
that's right. He does street school in the summertime at his school, and he allowed him to come over there and teach the African history to the kids, and they love it. You can see how they act. I put some comic books of those same names. I'm gonna show them to you. They're called Goldsville comic book,
Okay.
and you will love it.
And let me say this real quick before you go. And because of the teaching and the training, I just have a call one of these scholars that we would get with. We got a full ride scholarship.
I'm talking about, bro.
Alumni.
That's what I'm talking about.
All but academic.
Well, that's not one of the scholars. He used to teach over there for
Okay. He started with me the first year.
Yeah, he was. I taught him that with him too.
He was at Justice, Juvenile Justice. We took a group of kids out of Juvenile Justice on the juvenile, and a couple of van loads and brought them over to the school.
That's what I know.
Just to teach and train them, give them a different outlook, and let them know.
And not to be quiet, but let me say this to you, because I want to hear from them. No, let me hear you, and then I'll leave and we'll walk. Go ahead.
Oh, no problem.
Why do
no
you think
problem.
it's important?
Well,
No,
it's
it is
important to me
important.
though, because like I said, I want to speak back off him and this young man.
You got
and
your
everybody.
permission from them.
I've got permission to talk about it.
There you
I
go.
appreciate it. Thank you, sir. You know, I say still learning, but it's all about the empowerment of knowing my history. You know, that, like I said, the slavery part that we always taught. And when you get that empowerment, knowing what you have done, the empowerment of knowing what we have done as people, you know, your mind changed, your mindset changed. Like I even knowing your history and your family. you know, you start going doing the genealogical and stuff. You start, man, I had a great great granddad that did this. You know, you feel a sense of empowerment. I can do that too. And that's what it make me feel about knowing my history is that, you know, that it just gives me a sense of empowerment that I can empower somebody else, you know, as well. So not just only to keep it for myself, but hopefully empower somebody else to lift up higher than what that mentality is.
Man, y'all know me. I love this, but I'm gonna respect your time too. And we're coming back for this.
Yeah.
All right. We have to stay engaged because they don't want us to talk about it. We can't talk about it in school. We don't do it in church. When do you talk about it?
What's the most important? What's one of the most important songs out at the Alamo? What was the most important tune?
From the Alamo.
From the Alamo, what was the most important tune?
I don't know.
The Deguela. When they blew the Deguela, there were black slaves in that fort who walked out.
See, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So when we come here, we're gonna learn things like that. Let me show y'all this part before you leave. When I teach this to young people, here's one of them. They do change. Their mannerisms change, everything. I've been in the juvenile detention center talking to young kids. They'll come, man, I remember you. You told me that. When they learn something about themselves, they act different, their mannerism is different, they talk different, they walk different, their grades change, they start respecting their parents, they start respecting white people. A lot of that. Ask me how I know.
He did it.
Because it happened to me. I'm from the south side of Chicago. So I started learning my history. I didn't want to do anything with white people. Hell, my granddaddy white. I didn't want to have to do with none of them. But when I learned my history, my whole life changed, and I found out there's only one race of people. That's the human race. And you can't be disliking people for that. But my grandmother and my granddaddy, but let me leave you with this. I ask these questions. I want you to take it with you. 2 questions I ask everywhere I go. You ready? Can you think of a book from kindergarten to 12th grade that's required reading and talk positive about people of color? I'll wait. That's the first question. Can you think of a book? Everybody else seems like they've graduated from high school. Can you think of a book from kindergarten to 12th grade that's required reading and speak positive about people of color? No? Can I ask another question? This is a deep question. You ready for the second question? Can you name a time when black people were not enslaved and we empowered, meaning we run this shit with Honey Ice Tea? I'll wait. And if you can't answer neither one of those questions, I got another question that's deeper than that. Y'all ready for the next one? Third one, I'm leaving you. So we can't name a book from kindergarten to 12th grade that's required reading to speak positive about people of color. You can't name a time when black people are not enslaved and empowered. This gonna hurt, but I gotta ask it. It hurts. How did it make you feel? Better yet, how would it make you feel if you can't, when your kids come to you, Mimo, Paw, tell me a time when we were not enslaved and empowered. What would you tell your own damn kids, not somebody else, your kids? I don't care if you black, white, or purple. What would you say to them? Mommy, people, tell me a time when black people were not enslaved and empowered. What would you say? And keep in mind, I'm talking to superintendents, principals, presidents of the college, and I ask these exact same questions. Can I tell you what kind of response I get?
Yes.
Now I'm gonna give you the response. You ready? You just heard it. Nothing. Silence. Can I get even deep? I'm leaving you. You ain't told me nothing. Yeah, we silent in here. Give me a time when black people were not enslaved and empowered. Come on.
Well, I can say
Give me one.
prior to white people messing it
That's a
up.
good question. That's a good answer. That's a good one, sister. At least she there.
Right. But in Oklahoma, there was the black community
Yeah.
that they were doing amazingly well. I'm embarrassed to say I had no knowledge of that until I was a full-grown adult.
I
I
don't
mean,
even
like
want
in
you
the
to
last
embarrass.
10 years.
I'm gonna say it. She talking about choke overall. But guess what? Not even then. Ask me how I know.
Well,
We wasn't empowered then. Ask me how I know.
okay, go ahead.
Ask me how I know.
Tell me.
Because they bombed it. You dropped the bomb on me, so we couldn't have been empowered.
Well, no, I'm saying prior to white people.
Yeah, I knew
and
what you were
I
saying.
prefaced that.
I
Prior
knew what
to
you were
white
saying. Yeah, you did. But I wanted to add to that part. And I'm still looking and I'm still asking and nobody's responding to that. You got to answer. Stay right there. Oh, we got to go. So here's the answer. So y'all ready for the answer? Y'all ready for the answer? How many digits in the world? I didn't stutter. How many digits in the world?
9.
Huh? What you say, bro?
9.
Nah, it's only 9 digits. I didn't ask you numbers. Well, where them damn 9 numbers come from? Ain't that a good question? They told me I got a degree in mathematics. They told me that Pythagoras is the father of math and Euclid is the father of geometry. That's a lie. Ask me how I know. They can't build a pyramid. How you gonna be the father of math or the father of geometry? They said 12 inches equals a foot. Man, I don't get 12 inches. Where the measurements come from? That's a nice shirt you got on. What color is that? Where them damn colors come from? So when y'all think about it, we taught the world all of that. The first person to count was a woman. She counted on the limbo bone. She counted the days before her period. We taught the world numbers. Colors come from plants. We gave them plants. Oh, let's get deep. The first time writing they said was hieroglyphic. Well, hell, who wrote it and who read it? So when you ask that question, how a time we were not enslaved and empowered, when we built them pyramids, there wasn't nobody white people there. There is a time when we was empowered. But if you don't know that and you begin your history in slavery, you end up in them projects. But if you begin your history before then, you can build those pyramids again. Everybody up. Because I got to respect your time. We're going to do this again. If you learn something new today, raise your black, white, brown hand. All right. Thank you. See y'all next time. All right. Chief, get the numbers, man. We got to do this. All right. You got to come give me a presentation. They ain't seen it yet. I would love to do it for the numbers. Yeah. So,